So, Alice, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, and it says it's recording, so
Great.
that means we both remembered, which is good.
Very
All
good.
right.
So
Okay.
let me see. I forgot a few housekeeping things. It looks like a lot of you have had some experience on Zoom, but it's much better while we're on Zoom if you mute yourself, so that if all of a sudden the cat screams in the house, it doesn't come across to everybody and disrupt the program. And then you can enter a question into chat down below. And I'll try to keep my eye out for that. Alice, we'd like to give Alice time to share all this information that she has and save those questions for the end. So you might have a little piece of paper that you could jot some of those questions down, or list it in chat, but we might wait to answer that towards the end. Okay? So Alice, back to you.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for the introduction. And I'm so happy to be talking to you today about monarchs, especially since we had a very late start to the monarch season here in the Northeast. And I was getting a little anxious that I was going to have to give this talk without co-stars. I am happy to say things have turned around in the last week, and I have some co-stars with me who I will be sharing with you. And this presentation is going to have 3 parts to it. The first part, I'm going to tell you about growing milkweed, because if you're growing milkweed, you have to be growing milkweed if you're going to be raising monarchs. You cannot do one without the other. So we're going to start with a little bit about growing milkweed and move on to how you raise monarchs. And in the third part, I'm going to introduce you to my co-stars who have obligingly appeared today in all the different instars that I'll be talking about, so that you'll be able to get a up close and personal look at what you'll be seeing when you are raising them. So that's exciting. And I just admitted a couple people in, Gary, so keep an eye out for that, because once I start talking, I'll probably not notice that we have come in. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. So the good news is you don't have to see my face the whole time. And here we go. I'm sharing. And I am going to full view so you can see the... Hang on. There we go. All right, so I think you can all see my slides now, and but pardon me for one quick little adjustment here. I was not at the top of the presentation when I was last minute, so here we go. And we're off. All right, so how to raise multitudes of monarchs and milkweed right in your backyard. So I really think of these little creatures as nature's miracles, and it's a privilege to be able to see what they can do right in your own garden. And here, what I want to show you is the life cycle of the monarch to give you a sense of the transformation that occurs. In the right picture, there is a monarch who was in my own garden preparing to lay eggs. And, the eggs are laid by the female under leaves, and in 3 to 5 days they hatch. The larvae take 9 to 14 days. The warmer it is, the faster they come, and then the chrysalis another 8 to 13, and poof, you have an adult. And here's just a little close-up of a monarch enjoying some swamp milkweed in my garden last year. So I think most of you know about the monarch migration, but just to recap it here, the monarchs who visit our gardens here in the Northeast in the summer are already the second or third generation that which left Mexico in March. So they are mating, reproducing, and creating a new generation as they move steadily north. And they do show up all the way up in Canada and then turn around, and that last generation, which is the super generation, makes the long trek down to Mexico. And these poor little creatures are doing this during hurricane season, I'd like to point out. So it said that the migration was rough on the monarchs last year because a couple of the main groups migrating south ran into hurricanes. So monarch populations, I know, I'm sure you have heard, are in trouble, and that's how I got into this. It's really, unfortunately, a perfect storm between climate change and weather extremes, which cause droughts that decimate their milkweed supply, the loss of habitat, both in their winter overwintering grounds, the illegal logging. The trees they overwinter in are as majestic as redwoods and quite coveted by the illegal logging trade. So even though they are in sanctuaries now, illegal logging happens all the time. And we're talking about a vanishingly small area, just a few hectares where the sanctuaries exist. And our entire East Coast milkweed population is depending on those shrinking spaces. So pesticides, herbicides, and GMOs are a kind of a toxic mix that in the course, when agribusiness eliminates weeds, they're eliminating milkweed, and that means they're killing off the host plant that the monarch needs. You may have heard that the disheartening news that this last winter, they lost a lot of ground in the monarch population in the overwintering sites, and you can see the trend of this arrow is not good. Our beloved monarchs are on the path to extinction if we don't increase habitat. And it's vital that we look at this as our jobs in our yards, because the places their habitat used to be, which was on roadsides and fieldside, those are going away because they're being killed by herbicides. So we don't want to lose these beautiful creatures. And here's what you can do in your own backyard to save them. Make your garden monarch friendly. The first thing that I do have to tell you is that if you have an all shade yard with no less than 6 hours of sunshine, you will have a hard time attracting butterflies to your yard. They really the flowers that they prefer that are abundant in nectar require a decent amount of sunlight. So maybe you don't have a sunny spot anywhere in your yard, but you do on your deck or your patio. So start a container garden. But that's the first mandate.
I just logged into a webinar on.
Okay, good. You got her muted. All right, here we go. So our next slide. Here we go. The next key step in making your garden monarch friendly is annual flowers, which provide nectar. So this is important because annual flowers bloom their heads off all summer. Perennial flowers, which we love, have a blooming time and then stop. So to get that continuous ribbon of color and a bloom time, you need annuals to add the backbone to your garden. And one of the things that you'll see in this picture is much beloved of monarchs is zinnias. They also love, this is a Mexican sunflower. If you plant these, put them at the back because they do get to be 6 feet tall, but oh my gosh, all the butterflies love them. And then here's a host of other things, ageratum and cosmos and marigolds and cleome and are all things that you should be adding to your garden to make the monarchs happy, and other butterflies too. Also key, planting perennial flowers that provide nectar. And there's a host of plants that do this. And I meant to mention to you at the beginning of this talk that I will be making this slideshow available to you as a PDF. So don't feel you have to frantically take notes, but just enjoy the pictures and we'll get those to you later. What you can do is in the chat, enter your email address and let us know that you'd like to get the PDF. Next, in making your garden monarch friendly is planting milkweed. So I saved the most obvious for last, which is the host plant of the monarch. This is the only, while an adult monarch is happy to take nectar from any blooming flower in your garden, they have to have milkweed to lay their eggs on. If there's no milkweed in the garden, you will have no monarch eggs and no caterpillars. When you see a butterfly, monarch butterfly, who seems to be flitting around and actually not stopping at the nectar plants, and if she's flitting around, you're probably looking at a female who is looking for milkweed to lay her eggs on. And the females, well, all butterflies, they taste with their feet. So when you see butterflies in general flitting around and landing on things and getting up and landing on something else, they are looking for the host plant that their species has evolved with, and that's what they want to lay their eggs on. In the case of monarchs, it's always milkweed. So Monarch Watch says, make sure that you try to plant a variety of milkweed, not just one variety, because they do have bloom seasons even within the milkweed family, and to make sure that there is a plentiful amount of milkweed growing in your garden for them, it's better to have more than one species at a time. I'll tell you more about that. You do want to go organic, and that means no pesticides, fungicides, herbicides. And then I tell that to people, and then understandably they get a little freaked out when these characters show up. And so I'm here to tell you, you do not have to nuke them. They actually, for one thing, they aren't hurting the monarchs. They will do a number on the plants if there's enough of them. So the fellows on the left are milkweed bugs, and there's a large one and a small one, and then they're nymphs, and they all pile on the pods. They are sucking the juices out of the pods, which means that if you've had a lot of them, your seeds may not be viable because they have sucked the juice out of the seed. So if they get to be a little bit overwhelming, you can sweep them off with your fingers and sweep them into a bucket of soapy water, but generally I leave them alone. On the right, you have, these are oleander aphids, these orange things, and they're little teeny tiny. Those are the nymphs of the aphids, and they're coating the stems. When you see that, if it's really getting to be too much, you can hose them off, you can mist them and sweep them off with your fingers. If you do that every so often, you'll keep their numbers down to a dull roar, and with luck, the ladybugs will come and help finish them off for you. So don't feel that you have to reach for the pesticide, because remember, if you do, you are killing baby monarchs as well as anything else. So other things that you can put in that they will enjoy having are a source of water, like a bird bath. A mud bath is nice too, if maybe you have a drippy faucet or something. And shelter from wind and predators, which means when you have other tall flowers and the milkweed is growing amongst the other flowers, they're going to be more protected. Okay, so let me introduce you to a few milkweeds you'll want to have in your garden. This is, excuse me a sec, Asclepias incarnata. Swamp milkweed is what is known as, and no, you don't have to have a swamp to grow it. It would like to be given a drink now and then, but basically it'll be fine in any garden. If you try to sow this from seed, you have to do a process called vernalizing, which we'll teach you how to do when we do our winter sowing class come January. It won't bloom the first year, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't provide food from the monarchs the first year. They can get plenty of nourishment from eating the leaves on a plant that's not blooming, the little caterpillars. The good garden plant, very pretty, comes in white and pink. Tolerates a little shade. If you're a 6 hour of sunlight garden as opposed to an 8 hours of sunlight garden, this plant will do very well. It kind of poops out in late summer, which is why I suggest having some others, milkweed as well. So we have, this is common milkweed, and this is one that many of you may be familiar with because this is the one that grows on the roadsides. Now, I don't advise putting common milkweed in your beautiful little cottage garden because common milkweed doesn't have great manners. It will take over, it spreads by rhizome. But if you have a kind of a meadowy area in your yard, or maybe there's just kind of a little bit of a rough patch that you sort of let naturalize, this is the perfect plant to put there. It's very tough, it's very resilient, and it has huge leaves. So one leaf is an all-you-can-eat buffet for a caterpillar. And its big leaves persist even into late summer, so it provides a valuable food source. This one you may all recognize, Asclepias tuberosa, which is butterfly weed, is what it's called. It's a milkweed and comes in a beautiful orange. Very nice garden plant because it's not as tall, so you can put it toward the front of your border and looks lovely. The funny thing is, if you grow more than one kind of milkweed, you'll notice that this is not the caterpillar's favorite. Mom doesn't put her eggs on this very regularly, and so the caterpillars, when I'm feeding them leaves, if I feed them tuberosa leaves, it's the last thing they eat. But they'll eat it. If there's no other milkweed, they'll eat it just fine. And it's a nice one. I would recommend put it in. It has a long blooming period, beautiful blooms. It's very well mannered, and you can have it at the front of your bed where you can see it. And so definitely one to invite into your garden. So now this is one, Asclepias curasavica, a little bit of a mouthful, just call it Mexican or tropical milkweed. This is an annual in our area. And you may hear some people say, oh, you can't grow it. It's not native to our area. But in my view, in the view of most people who raise monarchs, it's a valuable addition to your garden because it keeps blooming and keeps flourishing into the fall. So when the migrating generation is passing through, they have no trouble finding some nectar in your garden late in the season, or some nice healthy green leaves to lay their eggs on in August. So this is one to have, but you have to plant it every year or save the seeds and sprinkle them around and let them sow themselves. But I include it, and so do most people who raise monarchs. These are a few. Grab these if you find them at the nursery, and you may get some seeds from me for this in a few years because I'm raising some now and hope to have seeds soon. But I have purple milkweed. I call it the purple princess. It is hard to get to bloom, but oh, it's so worth it. On the left here, beautiful, beautiful purple flowers. And then on the right, we have, this is a special subspecies of swamp that grows only in our area, and it's called pulchra, which is Latin for beautiful, which is an apt name. It's a really beautiful plant. Gorgeous big leaves, and another one that I wouldn't want to do without, gets to be about 4 feet tall. These are uncommon milkweeds. If you find them at nurseries that specialize in natives, I recommend pick them up because they're not that easy to find. We have, this is whorled milkweed, which is a dainty little milkweed with a pretty white flower. You could have it at the front of the border. It has these little skinny leaves, and you'd say, really, the caterpillar can find enough to eat on those? Yes, indeed. So that's a good one. Here's one, poke. Poke tolerates more shade than most milkweeds. So if you've got a shady patch in your garden, try this. This one, good luck if you ever find it. I finally laid my hands on 7 seeds, and I got some to start. So in a few years, I'll be sharing those. Meanwhile, sit tight. This is a beautiful one. This is variegata or red ring milkweed. Look at that beautiful bud and the white flower, so pretty. I have heard some people have found this in nurseries, so grab it if you have it. Longleaf milkweed, still looking for it. It's native, but I can't find it. Same with red milkweed, would love to find it, but haven't yet. So you guys email me if you come across this. Okay, so these tips are more detailed things about finding, obtaining milkweed and growing it. And in the picture on the bottom left, you see this is my setup. These are my winter sowing jugs that I started last winter with you guys, with some of you at Pound Ridge Library. And you can see the seedlings were already coming up. These are seeds that I started inside under grow light, so they were further along, but I had more than 17 different species of milkweed are represented on this table. So that's, I have high ambitions for the numbers of different milkweed that I will be able to introduce or return back to this area as natives. In all these resource links, you'll be able to look up afterwards when you get the deck and email to you. And if you choose to join, make your garden a butterfly habitat, you should definitely consider becoming a registered Monarch Waystation. This a certification, you can apply online for your certification. I also recommend that you join your town's pollinator pathway, and you can get a lot of interesting information about planting for pollinators on pollinatorpathway.org, and you can get a waystation sign and a pollinator pathway sign for your garden. And I would like to point out, I'm very proud to be amongst the number that have raised it. When I became a Monarch Waystation in 2016, there were only 9 in the whole state of Connecticut. At the last check, I checked earlier this season, we're up to 369. So let's go Connecticut, but you're still way behind the rest of the country, 27,000 nationwide. So start your habitat and sign up, and then you will have what you need to get started on raising caterpillars, because if you grow it, they will come. I'd like to show you, this is a little video that I made. Whoops, it's paused. Let me start it again. It's a little video. This is a monarch laying eggs. And if you see, she tucks her abdomen down. Come on, show us your abdomen. She curves it down, touches the underside of the leaf with the abdomen. There it is, there she goes. And she's depositing an egg on that leaf. So, if you're looking for eggs, I suggest that you go and look on the undersides of leaves, and you'll see they look like a little smaller than a sesame seed, like little pimples that sort of sit up on the surface of the leaf. And at the end of the talk, I'll show you an actual one. And I wanted to show you here the chrysalis. You can find chrysalises in the oddest spots. And this little chrysalis here on the top right is a little bit of a hero to me, because this is what got me started on the path to raising monarchs. I was out minding my own business picking tomatoes in my garden one day, and lo and behold, on the bottom of a tomato was a chrysalis. And I was like, oh my, what to do? So I brought it inside and I perched the tomato on a jar and waited and watched until the butterfly emerged, which was a really fun day. The other thing I want to show you is two caterpillars that I raised. And these 2 caterpillars were buddies. They came out on the same leaf, and I named them Frick and Frack. And this is time lapse. They chose to pupate next to each other. And I did it on time lapse, so you can see them pupating. This whole process, if I had watched it in real time, took about 15 minutes. That's how fast it goes. But I thought it was so cute that they spent all their time together on the same leaf, and then they decided to pupate side by side. That's why I called them Frick and Frack. which is a caterpillar joke, because if you know that caterpillar poop is called frass, so I felt frick and frack was somewhat apropos for these two. So there you see them turning into pupas side by side, and I was able to keep a close eye on them. And here are frick and frack emerging side by side, doing everything together once again. So you can see that this caterpillar raising business can be pretty addictive by watching these wonderful scenes emerge. So I hope I've got you in the mood, and now I'm going to take you through and show you how to do it yourselves. So, why raise monarchs? Some of you may have heard in the news there is discussion about monarch caterpillars, and is it healthy to raise them, and should we be doing it? And there's a lot of science on both sides of the discussion, but I do it because it is a wonderful teaching tool. Only 1 to 5% of monarch caterpillars reach maturity in the wild. I have a lot of caterpillars in my yard who raise themselves naturally, but I bring in a few every summer because of the wonderful experience it provides. So you get these gratifying visible results almost immediately. If you do it right, you're doing no harm. And you meet the nicest people. Because of this experience inspired me to become a master gardener. And I'm not kidding when I say it might just change your life, because it started me down this road to be a garden coach. All of this from one little creature who decided to pupate on my tomato. So I highly recommend it. So here we go. Sometimes my slide doesn't advance. There it goes. All right. So Monarch Raising 101, ready, set, go. Again, remember you can get this PowerPoint as a PDF afterwards, so don't worry about, this is just to give you an overview now. I'm showing you my basic setup here. These are flower tubes with little holes in the top, and I'm able to put the milkweed sprigs in them that have been well rinsed, and they hold water, and that keeps them fresh. And this is just a little test tube rack. All of these supplies can easily be obtained online, and I've got a link right here, which is a good place to get them because the guy who does it is so dedicated and provides so much good advice along with his supplies that it's a good place to go to get set up. You'll need a cage with fine mesh. The fine mesh helps keep stray predators out, and it also helps keep the little teeny caterpillars who are very small in. This is affectionately known as a poo-poo platter, which is just a tray that goes in the bottom, fits in the bottom of the cage really neatly. To make cleanup easy, you just whisk it out, rinse it out, and put it back in. So I find these supplies quite valuable. So those are my must-haves. But some people raise them in homemade, home-created apparatus. So as long as you have these features to keep them safe and protected, you're fine. So there are Facebook communities who actively support each other in the raising of monarchs, and they're a lot of fun, and a lot of the knowledge that I'm going to share with you today I picked up by becoming members of these groups. So that's something, again, the links to that are at the back of this presentation. But so now you've got your supplies, line up your supplies. It's time to go egg collecting. So you look for eggs on the mostly they're on the undersides of the leaves. And this is a microscopic view of an egg. And it's tapered, almost sort of like bullet shaped. And it's pearly in color. It has these fine ridges, very fine ridges that you can see if you have a good magnifier. And when the caterpillar is ready to come out, I caught this picture of a caterpillar ready to come out of its egg, and you can see that's the little black nose tip of the caterpillar pushing its way out of the egg. As soon as it gets out of the egg, it eats the eggshell. That's its first protein meal. And you want to rinse the leaves well. I have a little asterisk here about some people use a dilute solution of bleach on eggs and leaves. I do because I raise in quantity and I want to rule out fungi, but you don't have to do that, and many raisers do not. So my advice here is start simple, and if you really get into it and you want to get into egg bleaching, the sites that I have referred to will tell you exactly how to do it. Not that hard, but you don't have to start. Okay, so you've found some eggs, good for you. You brought them in, you put them in a little plastic tub. Simple little takeout tub will do the job. You don't pierce holes in the lid because they are so tiny, they will creep out. And when you're checking on them morning and night, you're letting in enough fresh air. They'll be fine. Then you start watching for the hatchlings, and they're teeny tiny. They're like little specks. They're smaller than your eyelash when they first come out. Sometimes you see their frass before you see them. You see little tiny specks of black. You know there's a caterpillar out there somewhere. They can make a meal out of one leaf over several days, so you don't have to bother them too much. I lift the lid, check on progress, and close it back up, and add a clean leaf now and then if the leaf has wilted. You don't even have to touch them because you can move them around by the leaf they're on, add a couple fresh leaves, and keep going. It's important to remember, if you're just starting this, don't bring in more than you can raise. You may not have that much milkweed in your yard to be able to pick for them. So I suggest at first, start with no more than 5. If you raise 5 at a time, you'll end up with maybe at most 30 total in the season. Choose a spot in your house to keep them with natural light and moderate temperatures. I have them in a room which I keep closed off from the air conditioner so that it doesn't get too dried out in there. So it's kind of a comfortable 75 to 85 in there most of the time. It's facing a lot of sunlight, which is nice, but the sunlight isn't drilling down on the cage, which is also important. And one thing to keep in mind, you can leave the windows open for fresh air, but if you have a neighbor who is prone to spraying, if they're treating their yard for ticks or mosquitoes or anything, I actually think you're better off leaving the windows shut so the pesticides don't get into your house. That's important. Okay, now we're at the caterpillar stage. You wouldn't believe how fast they eat. Whoops. And how fast they grow. So, sorry, my slide keeps moving on me when I don't want it to. So, caterpillars have instars. And so they actually molt 4 times before they pupate. And that means they literally shed their skin and then kind of make a leap forward size-wise. And after they shed their skin, you'll see this little black thing next to them, and they actually eat it. So that's more protein for them, shedding the skin. And so as they get bigger, they graduate from a small tub to a bigger tub and then to the cage. So by the time they're in what I would call a 3rd instar, they're ready to move to the cage. I do that because the big caterpillars have been known to accidentally, I prefer to think it's an accident, eat the little guys because they're so busy eating a leaf. If a little guy's on it, he's going to be a casualty. So when you've got your caterpillar in your cage, some people bring caterpillars in. I just bring eggs in. Because then I know that I can protect them from parasitic flies and so forth. If you bring in a caterpillar, you might be bringing in a caterpillar who is sick. Not always, lots of time they're fine. But if you notice any signs of illness, separate them from the rest of your charges so that they don't spread the illness. And that's something to keep an eye out for. But, if you're raising them inside, at most 5% of your caterpillars may develop a problem, at most 5%, and the rest of them will grow up healthy and fat, just fine. So it's just be on the lookout, and if you see something that doesn't look right, just isolate that caterpillar in another cage or in a takeout tub to make sure that it doesn't spread to others in the cage. So you're going to continue to clean the cage twice daily because their poop does accumulate. And if you do accidentally bring in a wild baby, sometimes it happens. I'm bringing in leaves to feed my caterpillars, and then I'm looking a day later. I'm like, well, where did you come from? Again, I will try to isolate them the wild ones in a separate cage, just to avoid having any problems. Okay, so watching for cats that are getting ready to go in a J. And a J is what we call it when you see the caterpillar doing this, kind of turning into a C curve and hanging upside down. This happens after they've gotten big and fat, and they usually go for kind of a walkabout around the cage, deciding where they're going to hang. They pick a spot, they hang there. They don't always pick a good spot. They usually go on the roof, which is great. And they can stay there until they're ready to emerge. But sometimes some of them decide to go on a leaf instead. That happened to me with one I have with me today, and I'll show you. If they go on a leaf, you just kind of want to take some dental floss and tie it up, because the leaf might shrivel and fall, and you don't want the chrysalis to fall down. So you take a piece of dental floss and you kind of tie it up. You can see that I actually did that with this little guy. Right here, you may see that there's what looks like a yellow clip and a string. That's the dental floss. So he had attached himself to a leaf. The leaf shriveled, but the dental floss held, so we were all good. Okay, so then I always move my caterpillars to a different cage than my butterflies that are about to emerge. And by the way, you know that they're about to emerge when the chrysalis turns black and you can suddenly see the butterfly through it. When you see that, you know that you are looking at, you're going to have the butterfly is going to emerge the following morning. So get ready, because you're about to have an adult come out, which is really cool. To finish on my Monarch raisings, and we're about to go into the live section of the program, which is the most fun for me and probably for you. But these are your Monarch Raising 101 resources, as I promised you, and all of these are really, really good. So Raise More Monarchs, Less Effort is maintained by the company that sells the Monarch Raising supplies, and it's a very good group. Another very good group is the Beautiful Monarch, which has a lot of resources that they'll, and really patient folks who help you with questions. So now, one final thing that I want to share with you before we go to the live portion is I want you to see the difference between a male and a female monarch butterfly, which, if you look carefully on the adults and the females as they fly past, if you see these two dark spots on the lower wings, you're looking at a male. And if the black, these are veins, these are actual veins. If these black lines are thicker and there's no black spot, you're looking at a female. And believe it or not, you can even tell by looking at the chrysalis what is going to be emerging. But you have to have really good eyesight or a young person helping you do it. But you can see there is an extra little line on the chrysalis that females have and that males do not have. So it's kind of fun to know before they even emerge how many you have of each. So in closing, before I go to the live section, just want to remind you the 4 essentials. To have a habitat to grow milkweed and bring in the caterpillars, you need a spot with enough sun, 6 hours. You need to plant annuals and perennial nectar flowers for all season bloom. You need to plant native perennial and annual milkweeds, and you need to go organic with no pesticides or herbicides. So with that, I'm going to tell you something that you can do at the end of this program, which is, and this you might want to make note of now, is that if you want to send me a self-addressed stamped envelope to Alice Ely at 27 Cross Highway, Westport, 06880, I will send you free milkweed seeds that you can sow next winter in a winter sowing class. So be sure and do that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Coming back to you. And Joanne Cafiero needs to, oh, she's just on my screen. It's okay. Not on, I can see her, but you guys can see me. So that's all good. All right. But if, Carrie, are you there? Okay.
I am here.
Okay. Could you turn off Joanne's video so I can see myself? And then we'll go ahead and I will start showing.
Turn off Joanne's video?
It's off. It may be off now because she disappeared. So we're
okay.
Good. We are all good. All right. So here I am, and here are finally, at long last, my co-stars. And I'd like to bring these up to the camera so you can see them. And this little fellow molted this morning, and he's already eaten. When I showed him to Carrie at the beginning of our talk, let's see, there we go. There he is. He's already eaten. See, remember his black skin, Carrie? It's already gone. He's snacked on his skin. Okay.
Oh, Alice, can I check with people? Are they seeing you on large screen? Can you kind of wave your hands if you're seeing Alice on the large screen? Oh, good, good. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, okay. So here we go. Here is, this guy, this little fellow is not so little anymore. He's this is a 5th instar caterpillar. See how big he is? And pretty soon he's going to be leaving the milkweed and crawling around the mesh cage that I have for him, looking for a place to pupate. This little guy, this one's a 4th instar, so you see the difference in size, just in instars. And I have here, I have a chrysalis. I think you can all see the chrysalis. And so we're going to have a little gender reveal. I took my magnifying glass to this fellow earlier, and the thing that reveals gender is at this angle, so you won't be able to see it. But it's a girl, everybody. And I always think these scientists don't really know exactly what these gold dots are for, and the beautiful gold dots, but it looks like a little jewel case. I always think they're so beautiful. So this one I'm going to tie up. If you ever get one like this, see how it pupated on a leaf as opposed to the top of the roof or a horizontal surface. So I'm going to be taking some dental floss, and I'll tie a loop of dental floss carefully around the black stem, that's called the cremaster of the pupa. I'll tie it around that and make it nice and secure, and then I'll attach the dental floss to a clip that I'll put so that it hangs, because it's very important that the chrysalis hangs straight like this. When they emerge from the chrysalis, they hang onto the chrysalis and they hang upside down, and their wings can then dry straight. If they emerged and they were squinched into a corner, the wings would dry crooked and they would never fly correctly. They would always be stunted. So I will be making sure, I gave this guy a couple of days for the chrysalis to harden because I'm going to be handling it and I wouldn't want to damage it. So the chrysalis has now had time to harden. It's almost like a fingernail, a little in its, I guess, consistency. But anyway, I'll be tying a knot around the cremaster, the black cremaster, with dental floss, and then I'll use the dental floss to hang it safely. So even after this leaf shrivels, this thing isn't going anywhere. until she comes out as a butterfly. So I also have to show you here. So this is what I keep the medium-sized guys in. This is just a note to myself so I can keep track. There are 4 in here. So when I'm changing, cleaning out the cage, I lift them out by their leaves, set them aside on a paper towel, clean out all, dump out the frass, rinse out the tub, and, put them back in again with a fresh paper towel. But I always write how many are in the tub, because sometimes one's hiding and it is possible to accidentally throw one out when you're trying to clean the cage. So I know that I started with 4, I got to end up with 4. So here's one of my little buddies. So this guy is, this is a second instar. So, and let's see. Looks like you see a little bit of black next to it. This one has molted just recently, and that's what remains of its skin from the last time. They also lose the little face cap. You'll sometimes see the little tiny face caps lying on the floor of the cage from when they molt, because they outgrow their faces. And so there's this face cap that kind of protects them when they're chewing, and they molt it off, and a new one, bigger one, is underneath. So you can tell when they're getting ready to molt because their face cap looks a little tiny for the rest of their body. Funny. So here's another guy. So out in the wild, sometimes the way you know you've got caterpillars around is you see those little circular holes. Oh, here you can see him poke. See this guy? He's peeking through the window at the top here. You can see his antenna. Anyway, so this is where the medium-sized guys live, in these little takeout tubs. And the teeny tiny ones live in these tubs. And I've got 3 eggs in here, and they all hatched just yesterday. So they are so teeny tiny. I think you might be able to see one here. Teeny, teeny, teeny tiny. There we go. I hope you can see. There's one. Right there, so tiny. And this one's a day old. He was really teensy yesterday. Like I said, smaller than an eyelash. So you really have your reading glasses on when you're doing this, if you're of a certain age, as I am. So last, I have, if this egg had been emerging, I was going to try to show it to you on my microscope so you could see the egg emerging. But he's not coming out yet because the tip hasn't turned dark. So I'm just showing you the egg. But I think you can see, if you see how it sticks up from the leaf? If you're out egg hunting, you can sometimes get faked out because there'll be little droplets of milk sap from, if the leaf gets bruised in any way, it'll exude a little droplet of white sap. But these monarch eggs are more of a creamy color than a white color. And they have that kind of tapered point, that bullet point. With a magnifier, you can see all the other details. But if you're out in the field looking for eggs, looking at it in profile like this is kind of the giveaway to make it easier to say, yep, that's an egg. There you go. So, with that, I've shown you all the stages. I've shown you my buddies, my co-stars. And so that really is the final part of my presentation, and I'm open for questions if anybody has any. So fire away.
So I'm wondering if I should unmute everybody, but I see Marjorie has her hand up. Okay, let me see. So I think you might need to unmute yourself also. There you go.
Folks can unmute themselves at this point, I believe. So,
okay, so
Marjorie.
I have a quick question. My sister would like me to come to Maine, and I said, I don't know what to do because I'm going to be raising butterflies, I hope. I just saw I'm in Amherst, Massachusetts, so I just saw my very first butterfly
wonderful.
2 or 3 days ago. So and she said, well, bring it and you can let it out here. And I said, I don't know if that's a good idea. If it was, if it was created in Amherst, to let it go in northern Maine.
Well, you know, it is funny. Strictly speaking, you're not supposed to transport things across state lines. But I would say, I know people who have done exactly that. So if it's already in chrysalis, you know, and you know how many days it's been in chrysalis, you know which day approximately, if it went in chrysalis on day 1, on day 8 or 9 is probably when it's going to come out, and you have a day's warning because it starts turning dark.
Right.
So if you thought that you wanted to, and you were afraid that it wasn't, that you didn't have anybody to leave it with, could bring it up with you and let it out up there. And it really, I would just try to let it out someplace where you know it's safe and they're not spraying and there's a nice, that would be a good thing to do. But if you can find someone in your area, so for example, if you are on one of the Facebook groups, you can say, hi, I'm in Amherst, anybody raising monarchs nearby? And chances are somebody is. And you can always ask them to butter sit for you. I'm going away tomorrow, and my friend Janet is butter sitting for me. So it's usually you can find somebody who's happy to do it.
Thank you.
Alice, we have another question, and that was, how long does each stage last?
In the egg to larva stage, the eggs are 3 to 4 days. The larvae are 8 to 14. That's a big range, but it is somewhat temperature dependent because in cooler weather, the whole process, metamorphosis, takes longer. And then the chrysalis stage is 7 to 10 days on average. I once had one that came out, it took 2 weeks for it to come out because it was the end of the season, it was quite chilly and it took longer. So you're really talking about roughly a month for the whole life cycle. And the butterflies that are born during the summer, which are not going to be the generation that makes the final migration back to Mexico, the summer monarchs live a month. The ones who migrate live from the fall when they emerge until spring when they lay the next generation of eggs. So that they call them the super generation, and they are their metabolisms are subtly different, and they go into diapause before they start migrating, which means they don't reach sexual maturity until spring. So they aren't laying eggs mid-trip. That happens in the spring. I hope that answered the question.
Very well. Any others? A question?
Well, I sent in a question regarding in this area, Carolyn, where has anybody found milkweed? You know, in the nurseries near the,
yes.
You know, where we are.
Yes, and I don't know where you are based. Are you in Westchester? I'm sorry, in where?
In Pound Ridge.
Oh, in Pound Ridge. Actually, I can tell you that you can get lots of native milkweed in Fairfield and Westport, but Carrie, I bet you know some places down by you that you might more easily refer her to. They're more convenient. But up by me, Native, which is a native-only nursery in Fairfield, is a great resource for different varieties of milkweed, and so is Gilberti's, has a lot of different varieties of milkweed, and also so does Oliver's in Fairfield. Carrie, what about in the Pound Ridge area?
So I'm going to ask for some help from Leslie in a minute here. I haven't been out and about too much this summer, but I have in the past been able to find swamp milkweed at local nurseries,
Okay.
Gardens or Pound Ridge Nursery or Gossett's or whatever. Leslie, do you?
Yes, I also found swamp milkweed at Pound Ridge Nursery and at Perennial Gardens on 22 in Bedford, if that helps.
Okay, yes, thank you. That's terrific. Thanks.
Another question? Let's see, somebody also replied that they got purple milkweed from Oliver's and it all bloomed. You can see this in the chat. And she deadheaded it and one is going to bloom again. What a good idea.
Which is great.
Yeah. Somebody else asked about digging up milkweed. Milkweed doesn't like to be moved. Even the young plants kind of don't like to be, you know, taken out of their pot and replanted, although because they're younger, you have greater success. But digging plants up, even from a friend's garden and transplanting it is difficult. They just don't like to be moved. Right, Alice?
That's true, especially the swamp has a taproot and tuberosa has a taproot. So the ones that you get at the nursery have been growing in pots, so they didn't upend them, if you will. So they, you know, they haven't uprooted them and put them in the pot. They've been grown that way. So I grow my milkweed that I raise. I grow it, most of it, for 2 years in pots. And then I put it in its final home, either with me or with someone else, as opposed to planting in the ground and digging it up and planting it someplace else. So it's, but they're not hard to take from a pot to the ground. They don't like to be dug.
Let's see.
I have a
Carrie,
comment.
Yes.
Alice, I would suggest if somebody does want to try to pick up the plants from the soil and transplant them, that it's done in very early spring, when the ground is first workable, and dig very deeply, and then immediately put it in its new home, having dug the home that it's going to first before you pick up the plant, and then just watch it transplanted. I would suggest part of that also is when you see the plants first emerge, the shoots first emerge, until about 4 to 6 inches, that would give you the best chance of success.
That's quite true, Leslie. And one thing worth noting about milkweed is it is very slow to break dormancy in the spring. And I've had people saying, my milkweed didn't come up. And I'll come over and I'll say, there it is. See that little teeny nose sticking its way up when everything else is 6 inches high? There's your milkweed. Don't worry, it's coming. And when I cut my milkweed down, you know, I leave heads on my flowers over the winter for seeds for the birds. So those stalks are helpful. You know, when I cut them down, I leave about 6 inches of stalk so that I can still find them when I'm weeding and know where the milkweed is by last year's stalk stubs. I see Annie's raised her hand.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that some of the advice that was shared really worked for me. So I had babies that came up naturally, and I dug them up when they were really little, like 2 or 3 inches, and gave them to other people. And it was early spring, and they're doing well. So that is definitely something that worked for me. So that's good advice. And then I wanted to ask about invasives, because you talked about some of the reasons why we're seeing milkweed and the obviously land use change and pesticides. But what about invasives? Because the other day I went walking at Randall's farm, and then I walked along Sport Hill Road, and it was covered in mugwort. There wasn't one milkweed plant. So I'm just wondering if you can talk about, you know, invasive management and milkweed populations, especially wild milkweed populations.
Well, that's, yes, Annalise, you're quite right that a lot of the invasive species that did not come from North America are unfortunately outcompeting our native species, which is partly why it's getting harder and harder to find different varieties of milkweed in the wild. So if you happened to be working on an area that had really pretty much gotten taken over by invasives, One of the things, and if it's kind of a natural area, would be you want to eradicate, pull out, uproot, get rid of as much of those invasives as possible. And in a case like that, common milkweed would be a good one to put in its place, because if you're getting rid of an invasive, you've created a job opportunity. I always say, so put something you want in there right away and put something that's good at holding its own, and common milkweed would be good in a situation like that.
Thank you.
Alice, I would follow up on what you're saying by, or actually increasing what you were saying by, before you pull something up that's invasive, make sure you have something to put in its place. If you pull it up and have nothing to put in its place, you're inviting all the seeds that are in that seed bank to emerge. And as you said, there are an awful lot of invasives around. So make sure you know in advance what you're going to put in its place and have it ready to put in there.
On a lighter note, I just finished reading the book Flight Behavior by Barbara Kingsolver.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, it's fiction, but she's such a good writer and brings so much science into it. So I thought I wanted to hear your take on it, and if you had read it and share it with others.
Yes, Flight Behavior by Barbara Kingsolver is such a delightful book, and she uses the migrating pattern of monarchs as kind of a line linking the story together, and a metaphor too for her main character, and it's just a wonderful book. And I insisted that my book club read it, and they thanked me for it immensely because it was really a wonderful story. So yes, if you read it, you'll enjoy the tidbits about monarchs as well as the story itself. So good suggestion. Other questions? I wasn't scrolling through chat, Carrie, so if there's a question lurking in there that I missed, be sure to tell me.
I've tried to keep up with them.
Okay.
If there's a question that hasn't been answered, please let me know. I know people had asked for your email again, and I put in your Alice at gardenwithalice.com.
Yep.
And I hope they have your mailing address for the seeds, the milkweed seeds. Remember, Alice said if you send her a self-addressed envelope, she will send you some seeds and information. And then in the winter, information's about winter sowing them.
I do have another.
Can you provide that again?
Yes, my mailing address is 27 Cross, C-R-O-S-S, Highway, Westport, Connecticut, 06880. And so just to send a stamped self-addressed envelope, and I will know, and I may not get to it right away because there's nothing to do with the seed right now. You can't do anything with the seeds right now, but I will send it back to you. There we go.
Thank you.
I had a
I saw Annalise raised her hand. Annalise?
Yeah, there was another guest who put in a question that I was also wondering about. So my common milkweed bloomed and died. I guess hers did too. So the flowers are gone. Will they still lay eggs on those leaves?
Absolutely, they will. Yes. That's the thing. And a lot of time, my first year plants don't bloom at all. And I find they like the young tender leaves the best. So if you have common milkweed, if you had several common milkweed, I suggest you cut down to a foot, half of it right now. I know that sounds drastic, but you cut it down to a foot right now. It'll send out new tender shoots, leaves, and they'll be there in August, just when mom is coming around laying eggs. And those new tender leaves are really great. So you can do that.
Okay, so cut them down to a foot in height. That's it.
Yeah, half of them, not all of them, half of them.
Okay.
And when you're cutting them down, check for eggs.
Yes. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. That's great.
Any other questions? Annalise. Yes, or is your hand still up?
Let me lower my hand. Yeah,
Okay.
that was it. Thank you.
Okay, good.
So I'm gonna ask you all in about 30 seconds to unmute yourself so we can like really give Alice a huge hip hip hooray and a round of applause, chaotic as it may sound. Isn't she amazing? Isn't she amazing with her knowledge, her observational skills, her photography skills, her ability to capture it all and then deliver it to us is just astonishing, isn't it? So I was so eager to bring her to Pound Ridge through Zoom, and we've gone beyond. I was hearing from where New Hampshire, Boston. It's great. So unmute yourself and let's just really like Yahoo! Thank you, Alice. Hip hip and
Alice,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bravo.
Very enjoyable.
Go forth and raise butterflies.
This is so inspirational. I love gardening and grow all kinds of things, but now to look at my garden with a whole fresh perspective of things living there, I always see those little caterpillars and I never want to hurt one because I never know what they are, but I'm just so excited to know what these are now and to not only care for them and cultivate them, but approach my garden with a whole new perspective. So thank you so much. And thank you, Carrie, and our local conservation board, because you continually inspire me to be a better steward of this planet. And I'm so grateful for your leadership here in our community. You're just the best. We're so lucky.
thanks, Diane.
yes, we are.
This is great.
So, so we have addresses and all kinds of stuff in chat, and Alice is going to send out her PowerPoint. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you. Thank you.
Before the library facilitators leave, I just want to make sure that I can capture that chat because I'm not sure I know how to save the chat.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Carrie, thank you again. Thanks, both of you.
Thank
Thank
you. So maybe I need to call Jennifer. I'm going to
Yeah.
call.
Yes, I just want to capture those.
Right.
Alice?
Yes.
Alice? Yeah, so if this was structured as a webinar and not as a meeting, I know that the chat is automatically saved as another recording. I don't know if it does it for meetings though.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for that tip, Annalise.
Sure. Okay,
Not sure.
thank you.
So, right, I don't know.
Actually, I just looked it up. It says there should be something that says save chat. Maybe you ladies have it. I don't seem to.
Let me
You
see.
have it that when I click on chat, I just see type message.
Okay, I see it says file. So I'm going to try this to my computer.
Oh, you know what?
Oh, yeah, I got it. I think I can do this. I think I can
Oh,
do
good. Okay.
Yeah.
You got it?
Uh-huh.
Because I think the other thing, if the library has the ability to email everybody, it just dawned on me, they could do just like they send out a link, can they send out, they send out an acknowledgement? Is it possible for them to just email everybody with the PDF?
I bet they can. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So that might be easier than individually emailing, but this way we've got it covered either way. We've captured the addresses of the ones who definitely wanted it. So, right?
I think I'm hoping I can save this.
All right.
See, it doesn't really say save. Open, cancel. Let me try it here. I don't know, Alice, if you go, do you, in the chat window, do you see the box that says file in the lower right-hand side?
In the chat window, I don't see that. Let me see if I go to gallery view if I can see it.
Wait, now I found something that said save chat. Okay, it said saved. I don't know where. I don't know where. That's the,
Well, I notice a note from Marilyn says we can work it out.
okay.
So,
Oh, good.
yeah, because I believe since they have all the registrants emails, they surely can do that.
Excellent.
But if not, you've saved the chat, correct?
I saved it, but I have no idea where it went. I mean, it said save chat, but
It says the default chat saves location. Sorry, that doesn't help.
what does it say? I know, right?
It's somewhere I read that it saves it to the local computer that is doing the recording. So who is that?
We were recording to the cloud. Oh, by the way, we can stop recording.
That's a good point.
So you know what? If it's on